Chapter 14. I positively cried out aloud. "What is it? What is it?" she asked me strangely. She was pale and looked gloomy. "You ask what is it? You, here in my room!" "If I come, then I come altogether. That's my way. You'll see that directly. Light the candle." I lighted a candle. She got up, went up to the table, and put before me an open letter. "Read it," she ordered me. It's de Grieux's handwriting," I cried, taking the letter. My hands trembled and the lines danced before my eyes. I have forgotten the exact wording of the letter, but here is the main drift of it, if not the actual words. "Mademoiselle," wrote de Grieux, "an unfortunate circumstance compels me to go away at once. You have no doubt observed that I have purposely avoided a final explanation with you until such time as the old position might be cleared up. The arrival of your old relation, de la vieille dame, and her absurd behaviour have put an end to my doubts. The unsettled state of my own affairs forbids me to cherish further the sweet hopes which I permitted myself to indulge for some time. I regret the past, but I trust that you will not detect in my behaviour anything unworthy of a gentleman and an honest man, gentilhomme et honnête homme. Having lost almost all my money in loans to your stepfather, I find myself compelled to make the utmost use of what is left to me. I have already sent word to my friend in Petersburg to arrange at once for the sale of the estates he has mortgaged to me. Knowing, however, that your frivolous stepfather has squandered your private fortune, I have determined to forgive him 50,000 francs, and I am returning him part of my claims on his property equivalent to that sum, so that you are now put in a position to regain all you have lost by demanding the property from him by legal process. I hope, mademoiselle, that in the present position of affairs my action will be very advantageous to you. I hope, too, that by this action I am fully performing the duty of a man and a gentleman. Rest assured that your memory is imprinted upon my heart forever." "Well, that's all clear," I said, turning to Polina. "Surely you could have expected nothing else," I added with indignation. "I expected nothing," she answered with apparent composure, though there was a tremor in her voice. "I had made up my mind long ago. I read his mind and knew what he was thinking. He thought that I was trying, that I should insist—" She broke off without finishing her sentence, bit her lips, and was silent. "I purposely doubled my scorn towards him," she began again. "I waited to see what was coming from him. If a telegram had come telling of the inheritance, I'd have flung him the money borrowed from that idiot, my stepfather, and would have sent him about his business. He has been hateful to me for ages and ages. Oh, he was not the same man. 1,000 times over, I tell you, he was different. But now... Oh, with what happiness I could fling that 50,000 in his nasty face and spit and stamp." "But the security, the IOU for that 50,000 is in the general's hands. Take it and return it to de Grieux." "Oh, that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing." "Yes, that's true. It's not the same thing. Besides, what is a general capable of now? And Granny!" I cried suddenly. Paulina looked at me, as it were absent-mindedly and impatiently. "Why, Granny?" asked Paulina with vexation. "I can't go to her, and I don't want to ask anyone's pardon," she added irritably. "What's to be done?" I cried. "And how could you love de Grieux? Oh, the scoundrel, the scoundrel! If you like, I will kill him in a duel. Where is he now?" "He's at Frankfurt, and will be there 3 days. "One word from you, and I'll set off tomorrow by the first train," I said with stupid enthusiasm. She laughed. "Why, he'll say, maybe, 'Give me back the 50,000 francs first.' Besides, what should you fight him for? What nonsense it is!" "But where is one to get that 50,000 francs?" I repeated, grinding my teeth as though it had been possible to pick them up from the floor. "I say, Mr. Astley," I suggested, turning to her with a strange idea dawning upon me. Her eyes flashed. "What, do you mean to say you yourself want me to turn from you to that Englishman?" she said, looking in my face with a searching glance and smiling bitterly. For the first time in her life she addressed me in the second-person singular. I believe she was giddy with emotion at the moment, and all at once she sat down on the sofa as though she were exhausted. It was as though I had been struck by a flash of lightning. I stood up and could not believe my eyes, could not believe my ears. Why, then she loved me. She had come to me and not to Mr. Astley. She, a young girl, had come to my room in a hotel, so she had utterly compromised herself by her own act, and I was standing before her and still did not understand. One wild idea flashed through my mind. "Paulina, give me only 1 hour. Stay here only 1 hour, and I'll come back. That's essential. You shall see. Be here. And I ran out of the room, not responding to her amazed and questioning look. She called something after me, but I did not turn back. Sometimes the wildest idea, the most apparently impossible thought, takes possession of one's mind so strongly that one accepts it at last as something substantial. More than that, if the idea is associated with a strong, passionate desire, then sometimes one will accept it at last as something fated, inevitable, predestined, as something bound to be and bound to happen. Perhaps there is something else in it, some combination of presentiments, some extraordinary effort of will, self-poisoning by one's own fancy, or something else. I don't know what, but on that evening, which I shall never in my life forget, something marvelous happened to me. Though it is quite justified by the laws of arithmetic, nevertheless it is a marvel to me to this day. And why had that conviction so long before taken such firm and deep root in my mind? I had certainly thought about it, I repeat, not as a chance among others which might or might not come to pass, but as something which was absolutely bound to happen. It was 10:15. I went into the casino with a confident expectation, and at the same time with an excitement that I had never experienced before. There were still a good many people in the gambling hall, though not half as many as in the morning. Between 10 and 11 there are still to be found in the gambling halls the genuine, desperate gamblers, for whom nothing exists at a spa but roulette, who have come for that alone, who scarcely notice what is going on around them and take no interest in anything during the whole season, but play from morning till night, and would be ready perhaps to play all night till dawn too, if it were possible. And they always disperse with annoyance when at 12 o'clock the roulette hall is closed. And when the senior croupier announces just before midnight, "Les trois derniers coups, monsieur," they are ready to stake on those last 3 strokes all they have in their pockets, and do in fact lose most at that time. I went up to the very table where Granny had sat that day. It was not crowded, and so I soon took my place at the table standing. Exactly before me was the word passe scrawled on the green cloth. Passe is the series of numbers from 19 inclusive to 36. The first series of numbers from 1 to 18 inclusive is called manque. But what was that to me? I was not calculating. I had not even heard what had been the winning number last, and I did not ask about it when I began to play, as every player of any prudence would do. I pulled out all my 20 Friedrichs d'Or and staked them on passe, the word which lay before me. "Vendu!" cried the croupier. I had won, and again staked all, including my winnings. "31!" cried the croupier. I had won again. I had in all 80 Friedrichs d'Or. I staked the whole of that sum on the 12 middle numbers. My winnings would be 3-1, but the chances were 2-1 against me. The wheel rotated and stopped at 24. I was past 3 rolls each of 50 Friedrichs d'Or in paper and 10 gold coins. I now had 200 Friedrichs d'Or. I was as though in delirium, and I moved the whole heap of gold to red, and suddenly thought better of it. And for the only time that whole evening, all the time I was playing, I felt chilled with terror, and a shudder made my arms and legs tremble. I felt with horror and instantly realized what losing would mean for me now. My whole life was at stake. "Rouge!" cried the croupier, and I drew a breath. Fiery pins and needles were tingling all over my body. I was paid in banknotes. It came to 4,000 florins and 80 Friedrichs d'Or. I could still keep count at that stage. Then, I remember, I staked 2,000 florins on the 12 middle numbers and lost. I staked my gold, the 80 Friedrichs d'Or, and lost. I was seized with fury. I snatched up the 2,000 florins I had left and staked them on the first 12 numbers, haphazard, at random, without thinking. There was, however, an instant of suspense, like perhaps the feeling experienced by Madame Blanchard when she flew from a balloon in Paris to the earth. "Quatre!" cried the croupier. Now with my stake I had 6,000 florins. I looked triumphant already. I was afraid of nothing, and staked 4,000 florins on black. 9 people followed my example and staked on black. The croupiers exchanged glances and said something to one another. People were talking all round in suspense. Black won. I don't remember my winnings after, nor what I staked on. I only remember, as though in a dream, that I won, I believe, 16,000 florins. Suddenly 3 unlucky turns took 12,000 from it. Then I staked the last 4,000 on passe. But I scarcely felt anything as I did so. I simply waited in a mechanical, senseless way. And again I won. Then I won 4 times running. I only remember that I gathered up money in thousands. I remember, too, that the middle 12 won most often, and I kept to it. It turned up with a sort of regularity, certainly 3 or 4 times in succession. Then it did not turn up twice running, and then it followed 3 or 4 times in succession. Such astonishing regularity is sometimes met with in streaks, and that is what throws inveterate gamblers who calculate with a pencil in their hands out of their reckoning. And what horrible ironies of fate happen sometimes in such cases. I believe not more than half an hour had passed since I came into the room, when suddenly the croupier informed me that I had won 30,000 florins, and as the bank did not meet claims for a larger sum at one time, the roulette would be closed till next morning. I snatched up all my gold, dropped it into my pockets, snatched up all my notes, and at once went into the other room where there was another roulette table. The whole crowd streamed after me. There at once a place was cleared for me, and I fell to staking again haphazard without reckoning. I don't understand what saved me. At times, however, a glimmer of prudence began to dawn upon my mind. I clung to certain numbers and combinations, but soon abandoned them and staked almost unconsciously. I must have been very absent-minded. I remember the croupiers several times corrected me. I made several gross mistakes. My temples were soaked with sweat and my hands were shaking. The Poles ran up, too, with offers of their services, but I listened to no one. My luck was unbroken. Suddenly there were sounds of loud talk and laughter, and everyone cried, "Bravo! Bravo!" Some even clapped their hands. Here, too, I collected 30,000 florins, and the bank closed till next day. "Go away! Go away!" a voice whispered on my right. It was a Frankfurt Jew. He was standing beside me all the time, and I believe sometimes helped me in my play. "For goodness' sake, go!" another voice whispered in my left ear. I took a hurried glance. It was a lady about 30, very soberly and quietly dressed, with a tired, pale, sickly face which yet bore traces of having once been beautiful. At that moment I was stuffing my pockets with the notes, which I crumpled up anyhow, and gathering up the gold that lay on the table. Snatching up the last roll of notes, I succeeded in putting it into the pale lady's hands quite without attracting notice. I had an intense desire to do so at the time, and I remember her pale, slim fingers pressed my hand warmly in token of gratitude. All that took place in one instant. Having collected quickly all my winnings, I went quickly to the 30-40. 30-40 is frequented by the aristocratic public. Unlike roulette, it is a game of cards. Here the bank will pay up to 100,000 thalers at once. The largest stake is here also 4,000 florins. I knew nothing of the game, and scarcely knew how to bet on it, except the red and the black, upon which one can bet in this game too. And I stuck to red and black. The whole casino crowded round. I don't remember whether I once thought of Polina all this time. I was experiencing an overwhelming enjoyment in scooping up and taking away the notes which grew up in a heap before me. It seemed as though fate were urging me on. This time, as luck would have it, a circumstance occurred which, however, is fairly frequent in the game. Chance favors red, for instance, 10 or even 15 times in succession. I had heard 2 days before that in the previous week red had turned up 22 times in succession, It was something which had never been remembered in roulette, and it was talked of with amazement. Everyone, of course, abandoned red at once, and after the 10th time, for instance, scarcely anyone dared to stake on it. But none of the experienced players staked on black either. The experienced gambler knows what is meant by this freak of chance. It would mean that after red had won 16 times, at the 17th time the luck would infallibly fall on black. Novices at play rush to this conclusion in crowds, double and treble their stakes, and lose terribly. But noticing that red had turned up 7 times running, by strange perversity I staked on it. I am convinced that vanity was half responsible for it. I wanted to impress the spectators by taking a mad risk, and, oh, the strange sensation! I remember distinctly that, quite apart from the promptings of vanity, I was possessed by an intense craving for risk. Perhaps passing through so many sensations, my soul was not satisfied, but only irritated by them, and craved still more sensation, and stronger ones, till utterly exhausted. And truly I am not lying. If the regulations had allowed me to stake 50,000 florins at once, I should certainly have staked them. People around shouted that it was madness, that red had won 14 times already. "Monsieur a gagné déjà 100,000 florins," I heard a voice say near me. I suddenly came to myself. What? I had won during that evening 100,000 florins! And what more did I want? I fell on my banknotes, crumpled them up in my pockets without counting them, scooped up all my gold, all my rolls of notes, and ran out of the casino. Everyone was laughing as I went through the room, looking at my bulging pockets and at the way I staggered under the weight of gold. I think it weighed over 20 pounds. Several hands were held out to me. I gave it away in handfuls as I snatched it up. 2 Jews stopped me at the outer door. "You are bold, you are very bold," they said to me. "But be sure to go away tomorrow as soon as possible, or else you will lose it all. You will lose it all." I didn't listen to them. The avenue was so dark that I could not see my hand before my face. It was half a mile to the hotel. I had never been afraid of thieves or robbers even as a small boy. I did not think of them now either. I don't remember what I thought of on the road. I had no thoughts. I was only aware of an immense enjoyment. Success, victory, power. I don't know how to express it. Paulina's image hovered before my mind, too. I remembered her and was conscious I was going to her. I should be with her in a moment, should be telling her and showing her. But I hardly remembered what she had said to me earlier, and why I had gone, and all the sensations I had felt, not more than an hour and a half before, seemed to me something long past, transformed, grown old, something of which we should say no more, because everything now would begin anew. Almost at the end of the avenue, a sudden panic came upon me. What if I were robbed and murdered at this instant? At every step my panic grew greater. I almost ran. Suddenly, at the end of the avenue, there was the glare of our hotel with its many windows lighted up. Thank God! Home! I ran up to my story and rapidly opened the door. Paulina was there, sitting on the sofa with her arms crossed, with a lighted candle before her. She looked at me with amazement, and no doubt at that moment I must have looked rather strange. I stood before her and began flinging down all my piles of money on the table. Breaking in. The letter that de Grieux leaves for Paulina just before his departure is supposed to resolve at last all the mysteries surrounding that pair. But as it moves rather quickly, some clarifying words may be in order. So here are events as I understand them. De Grieux had seduced Paulina in the past. This gives him significant power over her, for he can at a moment's notice ruin her reputation and her prospects as a future bride. This explains her sudden acquiescence to his demands in the Bermerhelm affair. Why did de Grieux target Paulina? Part of his motivation was probably simply libertinism, the joy of a dalliance. But part of it appears to have been financial as well, much as our narrator hypothesized at the end of Chapter 8. Paulina, after all, was set to gain a fortune from Antonina Vassilyevna, and so would come with a significant dowry if de Grieux could scoop her up in a marriage. But there is a flip side to this as well, for the Frenchman apparently assumes that Paulina is similarly interested, that she wants the security of being attached to the man who will surely have absconded with her stepfather's fortune. De Grieux's assumption about Paulina's motivation must have been communicated to her some weeks in the past. It appears to have been the stimulus for that fiery altercation between them, the tail end of which our narrator claims to have witnessed. And it also explains Paulina's desire to gain money quickly, not Granny's inheritance, but her own money, so that she can fling the pile of it in the Frenchman's face and have done with him forever. In his parting missive, de Grieux completes his insult. While he could leave the general completely penniless, he forgives him property of the value of 50,000 francs, which he tells Paulina will be available to her if she pursues a lawsuit against her stepfather. The message once again presumes that Paulina is principally after money, and that she would be willing to sue her own relation to get it, all while putting on the airs of the magnanimous gentleman. Naturally, both Paulina and Alexey Ivanovitch would enjoy some vengeance. But Alexey Ivanovitch is now returning to his room with piles of his own cash. And it is his own cash, not Paulina's. This was settled early on in the novella, when, after a brief gambling attempt on Paulina's behalf, he stated to her resolutely that in future he would play only for himself, not for anyone else. And as our narrator's money is piling up on a table in a hotel bedroom where affairs of the heart are very much center stage, we can imagine how things will be complicated, even if Alexey Ivanovitch has not foreseen it himself. There is one other small detail in this chapter which deserves some notice. At the gaming tables, our narrator confesses, he experienced a moment of suspense which might be similar to the one felt by a certain Madame Blanchard at a certain moment. The reference here is to Sophie Blanchard, one of the pioneers of hot air ballooning. While she had many successes, she did fall to her death in 1819, and it is that moment of vertigo as she spills out of the basket to which Alexey Ivanovitch is comparing his own gambling sensations. Perhaps there is more in that comparison than he realizes. End of comments.